We're going to switch gears a little bit now and talk about little kids, so make the switch with me, I hope. One of the things, Reba, when you were talking and your colleagues this morning about twittering, you know, Big Bird's been tweeting for a long time, so. And the other thing, because you've probably been seeing this all over the press about Bert and Ernie, you know, about rumors flying around them. I just want to make this point this morning that they are not gay, okay? They are not straight. They are puppets. And as we say, they don't exist below the waist. So now that we've got that out of the way, I want to talk a little bit more seriously about education. And the end of World War II being a pivotal moment in our nation's history. And it was the first time in 150 years that our government made a serious investment in public education. And it was the beginning of a long-term demographic shift of historic proportions. Soldiers were returning from war, and they were given a lot of opportunities to a higher education, long considered only attainable by the wealthy classes. I'll get this right. Women who served their country during the war in factories, on the ball field, in schools, and in the military returned home to their families. And then along came the 1960s, which brought turbulence and change. President Kennedy and later President Johnson launched the War on Poverty and mobilized a generation committed to change. Yet the social movements of that era in women's roles in civil rights and in experimental educational practices were not enough, and they were not able to really bridge a clearing gap, which is the gulf between a more affluent class of families who benefited from a booming economy and those whose low income or other disadvantages led their kids on a path to more meager outcomes. When Head Start and Sesame Street debuted over 40 years ago, they were actually quite aligned at the hip. They both shared an outlook which was focused on transforming vulnerable children and their families' lives through education. Before it was in sync, it was really a 360-degree approach promoting physical health, emotional development, and cognitive skills, which were focused on, of course, displayable skills. And from this very perch, the stage was set for Sesame Street over 40 years ago. Joan Gans Cooney, a television producer, and Lloyd Morissette, a foundation executive, at a dinner party in Manhattan, where we know all important things are decided, asked the question in this conversation, can television teach ABCs in the same way that it was promoting advertising jingles for sugared cereal? It wasn't a question of whether television was teaching, it was a question of what was it teaching. And they got together, the Harvard Graduate School of Education, which, trust me, knew nothing about television, a bunch of television producers who didn't know a heck of a lot about education, sitcom writers and others, and a guy who they literally thought was a member of the Weather Underground with long hair and a beard, who had a green sock puppet on his hand named Jim Henson, threw them all in a room and blew past all the psychologists at the time who told them, you can't put puppets together with live actors, the kids won't be able to make the mental leap. They were wrong. So don't always listen to the experts, because they caught lightning in a bottle, and within 10 months, Sesame Street was on the cover of Time magazine. It was the idea that really has now become the longest street in the world, reaching over 100 million children in over 140 countries around the world. And even back then, we didn't take ourselves too seriously, knowing the medium we were in. I'm going to show you a clip of a reel that was made back in 1970, and I think you'll see how it resonates today.
Listen, this is this is supposed to be an educational show. I like it. I like it. But we ought to say something about the show, telling it like it is. Maybe the nitty-gritty little kiddie show.
You know, I like that.
Well, then how about the itty-bitty nitty-gritty little kitty show?
That'll never work. No.
Hey, these kids can't read or write, can they?
No.
Then how's about we call the show Hey Stupid?
I like that. A few more phrases.
You really think you're going to get this show on the air?
Introducing a new television series for children.
Tape is rolling. Quiet, please.
Look right in there, Bert.
In there?
See right in there? Yeah, look a little closer.
12. C is for cookie. That's good enough for me.
Rubber ducky, you're the one.
Doing the pigeon.
Over and under and through.
I'm the king of 8, and I'm here to state that everything here has to total 8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The ladybugs came to the ladybugs picnic.
Have a rotten day.
Yeah, wow. There goes my kind of guy.
A little trip down memory lane. And we focused on letters and numbers. Whoops. We focused on letters and numbers, yes, but we've also done a lot of work more recently about targeted audiences and targeted needs like childhood obesity, the traumas and risks in families dealing with military deployment, some 700,000 preschool kids in this country whose parents are being deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan, and even food insecurity, which is another word, of course, for hunger that many of your foundations are involved in. Internationally, we're working on girls' education in Egypt, HIV infection in South Africa with Kemi, our HIV-positive Muppet who teaches kids that you can be friends with someone and play with them and not necessarily get sick, to deal with the 1 in 9 children in South Africa who are HIV infected, and to start breaking the silence around the stigmatization of HIV infection. In India, we have a program, this is Chumki, as you can see in a school uniform to promote girls' education. Very important icon there. And we're even working in mutual respect and understanding in places like Kosovo and Northern Ireland, even among Israelis and Palestinians. But it's not just about television anymore. Media are so ubiquitous today that children are literally wearing devices as part of their clothing and are always connected. More viewers are watching Sesame Street. Last year was the first year more people watched Sesame Street not on broadcast television or cable television versus other platforms like iPods and the internet. There are ebooks to read online and games to teach literacy and health. Podcasts and iPhone apps provide the go anytime entertainment and learning. The media landscape for kids is much different from when we started. According to research conducted by the Kaiser Family Foundation and the Joan Gans Cooney Center at Sesame Workshop, my terrific colleague Michael Levine is here, who heads the Cooney Center. On a typical day, the average elementary student is using personal media more time than they are spending in school or doing anything else other than sleeping, frankly. And mobile media is now where it's really going. Globally, 5 billion cell phones. Media on my time, where I want it, portable, on demand. Where is the education landscape at this same time that we're seeing this technology revolution? Since Sesame Street started, our nation's population has nearly doubled. Our classes and schools are stretched. In 1983, A Nation at Risk declared that a rising tide of mediocrity threatened the U.S.'s competitive position. 27 years later, that prescription sadly has proven prophetic as indicators show that low-income children entering school now are trailing behind, knowing 1/3 fewer words, according to Hart and Risley, the famous study, than their privileged peers. More than 1/2 of low-income and minority fourth graders score below basic level on their reading exams. And as we heard before, 1/2 of inner-city high school students today won't graduate at all. And as Secretary Duncan says, you can't get a good job just with a high school diploma. We have fallen from first in college graduation rates globally to near the bottom of the top 10 in less than 2 decades. Thousands of U.S. jobs go unfilled because students aren't entering the workforce with the technical skills they need to fill them. And the political landscape is in gridlock, stuck between arguments over merit pay and teacher contracts, when Wall Street bonuses boggle the imagination, and a skeptical public justifiably questions the continuation of investments in districts with disappointing outcomes year after year after year. Everyone at this meeting shares the belief, I know, that education should be at the top of the national agenda if we want to make America competitive and fit again. The stakes couldn't be higher. But let's be frank, we can't do things the same way we've been doing them to turn things around. So what can we do next to break a bad cycle? The Sesame Street experience offers insights worth considering. What keeps Sesame Street successful 40 years later is continuous experimentation. In fact, this season we actually literally call the 41st experimental season of Sesame Street. We are continuously asking ourselves what works and what doesn't. What is the next big idea for reaching children with educational content wherever they are and with whatever it takes? We know that children and media are indelibly linked whether we like it or not. We know that educational media can be effective as a learning tool. We also know that media alone cannot close the achievement gap, but it can help a lot. Students' natural attraction to technology reminds me of my grandmother's excitement over the refrigerator. As kids, we couldn't understand her visceral joy because, after all, to us, it was just an appliance. But she remembered life without that refrigerator. We didn't. To a child today, that cell phone, BlackBerry, or iPod is just an appliance. They've never known a life without technology, and never will. As I was reminded with 2 kids under the age of 5 glued to their parents' iPhones on the plane next to me last night. These appliances are having an increasingly important role. You as grantmakers are driving new ideas around charter schools, innovative assessment models, and the use of smart boards and iPads in classrooms, I know. There are schools like Quest to Learn in New York City that are using technology and gaming the same way conventional classrooms use textbooks, pencils, and notebooks. Or the School of One, also in New York, or High Tech High in San Diego, are personalizing instruction through technology-enabled project-based learning. They're breaking the mold on how to assess and reward a competent learner. These schools are generating enthusiasm and motivation in their students. Technology is sparking that enthusiasm. And younger kids, our digital natives, can benefit too. Digital learning, starting in the earliest years, should not be viewed as a threat to parent-child bonding or to purposeful engagement. If well deployed and culturally astute, digital educational media can untap a well of innovation in learning, much as we did 40 years ago, that can lead to real change for kids. So let's repoint our compass onto 5 planes. First, reinvent early education.